This is definitely the most mind-bending Japanese horror movie recently. Exit 8 is adapted from the hit horror game of the same name that took the world by storm in 2025. It doesn't rely on jump scares or violent elements of traditional horror. Instead, it uses psychological hints and atmosphere building to arouse the audience's inner fear, just like the game. The film opens from a first-person perspective. On his way to work, Kazuya Ninomiya is staring down at his phone screen. Most of the content is plastic surgery ads and job postings, interspersed with a strange news item. Scientists have successfully transplanted a human ear onto the back of a mouse. Remember these news bits, as they are closely related to the subsequent plot. Suddenly, a baby's cry pierces his ears. Not far away, an exhausted office worker is loudly complaining to a mother holding a baby. He accuses her of bringing a child on the subway during rush hour, saying the baby's crying is making him irritable. The subway slowly pulls into Osaka Station, and Kazuya hurries off. At this moment, his phone rings. It's his ex-girlfriend Nami. Nami's voice on the other end sounds weak. She tells Kazuya she's in the hospital, hesitating whether to terminate the pregnancy, and wants to hear his thoughts. Kazuya is lost for words. Pressure tightens around his windpipe like an invisible hand, and he starts to have trouble breathing. He hastily rummages through his bag for his asthma inhaler, puts it to his mouth, and takes several deep puffs. Nami reassures him not to stress too much, saying she's already made up her mind, but her next words are interrupted by signal interference, cutting in and out, until the call drops completely. Kazuya doesn't catch a single word. He looks up, only to find himself standing in an unfamiliar corridor. A sign clearly points to exit 8. A bald middle-aged man carrying a briefcase, with a blank expression, walks toward him. They pass each other, and Kazuya keeps walking. After turning a corner with lockers and a photo booth, he glances at a sign nailed to the left wall, which reads Exit 0. Kazuya doesn't think much of it, but before he goes far, the same bald man he just passed appears ahead again. Same clothes, same gait, same expression. A trace of doubt creeps into Kazuya's mind, but he keeps moving forward. However, when he turns the corner once more, the same scene repeats for the third time. The same corridor, the same man walking toward him. Kazuya finally stops, glancing anxiously at the sign above, then at the man who keeps reappearing. The man's footsteps suddenly stop. Kazuya turns around instinctively, only to find the man standing right behind him, wearing an extremely eerie smile. Kazuya is terrified out of his wits, spinning around and running as fast as he can. He doesn't relax until he's sure he's not being chased, but when he summons the courage to turn the corner again, the same familiar corridor appears before him once more. Kazuya completely breaks down, and the man calmly approaches him yet again. Without a second thought, Kazuya flees in the opposite direction. Though the sign beside him still points to exit 0, Kazuya finds himself back again, in the corridor leading to exit 8. The expressionless man, carrying a briefcase, approaches him once more, as if following a pre-programmed routine. After the man passes by, Kazuya tries to open several doors along the corridor, only to find each one tightly locked. Not budging an inch, just as he's nearly exhausted, he suddenly notices bright red liquid, slowly seeping out from under the poster on the opposite wall. In the next moment, blood also starts streaming down continuously from the ceiling of the corridor. Terrified by this horrifying sight, Kazuya spins around and flees, only to come to an abrupt halt at the corner. The middle-aged man is standing motionless in place, staring down at his phone screen, as if frozen in time. At this moment, Kazuya notices the exit sign on the wall has somehow changed from 0 to 1. Next to it is a white notice board, with 4 rules clearly printed on it. Don't miss any abnormal sight. If you spot an abnormal sight, please turn around and leave immediately. If you don't spot any abnormal sight, don't take the same path back. Please proceed to exit 8. Kazuya commits these 4 rules to memory, and continues toward the next corridor. This time, no blood drips from the ceiling, and the middle-aged man ignores Kazuya's questions completely. Like a soulless walking machine, Kazuya glances carefully around him, noticing no obvious abnormalities, but failing to spot that the lights above, which should have been neatly and symmetrically arranged, are now scattered in a chaotic, irregular pattern. Precisely because he missed this detail, when he reaches the next corner, the exit sign changes from 1 back to 0. Before entering the new section of the corridor, Kazuya takes out his phone, planning to record everything in front of him for comparison. He even takes photos of the lockers, photo booth at the corner, and the garbage on the ground one by one. This time, the exit sign finally changes from 0 to 1. Kazuya thinks he has finally mastered the rules, But, when he checks his phone's photo album again, he finds that all the photos he took earlier have taken on an eerie color tone, making them completely useless for reference. He has to rely on his own memory to remember every detail in the corridor. At this moment, the middle-aged man's footsteps suddenly disappear again. Kazuya turns around abruptly, only to find the man standing right behind him, wearing that eerie smile. This is clearly an abnormal sight, so he immediately turns around and walks back as per the rules. Unexpectedly, the bald middle-aged man starts following closely behind him, closing in step by step. Kazuya hurries to flee around the corner, and when he looks back again, the man has vanished without a trace, and the exit sign has changed from 1 to 2. This time, Kazuya commits every detail in the corridor to memory. But just as he is about to reach the end of the corridor, a baby's cry suddenly comes from one of the lockers nearby. Curious, he steps forward to check, only to find the locker completely empty. Just as he thinks it's just an illusion, all the lockers in front of him suddenly light up with red lights. Baby cries pour out from every locker door, weaving into a chilling chorus. This is clearly another abnormal sight, so Kazuya turns around in terror and flees back to the previous corridor. As he rounds the corner, the crying stops abruptly, and the exit sign changes from 2 to 3 in the next corridor. Kazuya carefully inspects the posters and several doors, finding no abnormalities. He is about to take out his asthma inhaler from his bag to catch his breath, when he suddenly senses something is wrong. The eyes in the surveillance camera sign on the wall are actually turning slowly as he moves. Realizing this is another abnormality, Kazuya hastily turns around and heads back. Sure enough, the number on the sign changes from 3 to 4 this time. In the next corridor, everything is normal, and Kazuya passes through smoothly. The number on the exit sign jumps from 4 to 5. After entering the new corridor, his phone suddenly rings. It's a call from Nami, asking where he is. Her voice sounding a little anxious, Kazuya hurries along while telling her that he's trapped in a subway corridor, and promises to find the exit as soon as possible to meet her. Just as he is about to reach the end of the corridor, he doesn't notice that a figure resembling Nami has quietly appeared behind him. That is clearly another abnormal sight. He doesn't suddenly realize it until he sees the exit sign change from 5 back to 0. The earlier scene was all a trap. He drags his heavy feet into the next corridor. The entire corridor is suddenly shrouded in dim yellow light, completely different from the lighting before. By now, Kazuya's spirit is on the verge of collapse, but he has to keep going. He immediately judges this as an abnormality, and turns around to go back. In the corridor that follows, he sees a little boy standing alone. At this moment, Kazuya is completely trapped in this infinitely looping corridor maze. The repeated scenes, the recurring encounters, create a near-hypnotic effect, gradually eroding his judgment, because he chose to go back. The number on the sign changes back to 0. This means Kazuya's previous judgment was wrong. The little boy isn't an abnormality. Kazuya turns back into that corridor once more, and sees the boy stretching out his finger, silently pointing at the bald middle-aged man who has been appearing repeatedly. Just after the middle-aged man turns the corner, and disappears from their sight, he doesn't stop to look at his phone as before. Instead, he suddenly rushes excitedly toward the number 4 sign. He takes the boy's hand, and they walk toward the next corridor together. This time, a girl in a school uniform walks toward them. The middle-aged man carefully inspects the posters and iron doors on the wall, and after confirming there are no abnormalities, he leads the boy toward the corner. He feels a little uneasy, worried that he might have missed some abnormality, so he bends down to ask the boy's opinion. But the boy remains silent like a mute, not saying a word. Helpless, the middle-aged man tries to smile, assuring the boy that he will definitely get him out of here. At this point, the sign has changed to the number 5. He only needs to pass through 3 more corridors to get out of this bizarre maze. In the next corridor, the middle-aged man is carefully counting the number of posters, when the girl's voice suddenly comes from behind, asking if he's lost. The schoolgirl smiles and says she's lost too, asking if she can leave with them. Just as the middle-aged man is checking the door nearby, the girl suddenly asks, "Did we come here because we're dead? Did we do something wrong to be sent to this hell?"
ねえ、本当に戻りたい？ここにいた方が良くないですか？
She pauses for a moment, then murmurs to the middle-aged man.
毎日ぎゅうぎゅう詰めの電車乗って会社行って同じこと繰り返してそっちの方が地獄みたいでかわいそう。
The middle-aged man doesn't know how to respond for a moment, but the girl suddenly repeats her previous words verbatim. After speaking, the girl freezes completely, not responding no matter how the middle-aged man calls out to her. Suddenly,
毎日ぎゅうぎゅう詰めの電車乗って会社行って同じこと繰り返してそっちの方が地獄みたいでかわいそう。
the girl's voice suddenly turns distorted and eerie. Terrified, the middle-aged man immediately grabs the boy's hand and runs backward. They dash forward as fast as they can, finally reaching exit 6. Only 2 corridors remain before escaping this nightmare. After confirming that nothing in the corridor has changed, the boy suddenly stops in front of an iron door, anxious to leave. The middle-aged man tugs hard at his hand to move forward, failing to notice that the door's handle is installed right in the middle of the door. This is clearly another abnormal sight. Because of this wrong judgment, all the middle-aged man's previous efforts are in vain. They are ruthlessly reset back to exit 0. Overwhelmed with anger, the middle-aged man slams his briefcase to the ground, roaring loudly at the sign, venting his inner frustration and despair. In the next corridor, a staircase leading upward suddenly appears before him. The middle-aged man rushes forward excitedly, thinking he has finally reached the end. But the boy comes to a dead stop in front of the stairs, refusing to step on them. No matter how the middle-aged man tugs at him, frustrated and angry, the middle-aged man suddenly shoves the boy away. The boy's cheek scrapes against the rough ground, leaving a bloodstain. Seeing this, the middle-aged man's heart softens. He squats down and invites the boy to leave with him, but the boy only stares at him silently, not saying a word. In the end, the middle-aged man reluctantly abandons the boy, walking up the stairs alone, and disappearing into a blinding white light. The boy silently climbs up from the ground, turns around, and heads back to the previous corridor. At this moment, the sign on the wall changes to 1, proving that the staircase just now was indeed an abnormal sight. In the next corridor, the boy sees the middle-aged man again, but now the man has become expressionless. He doesn't respond no matter how the boy tugs at him, only stopping at the corner and staring down at his phone as before. At this moment, the boy hears a shrill scream from ahead, frightening him into rushing back to the previous corridor. Before long, a confused man appears in front of him. It's Kazuya, who got lost at the very beginning. When Kazuya mistakenly takes the boy for an abnormal sight and turns around to leave, the boy hurries to catch up with him. Kazuya realizes his mistake. Through the change on the exit sign, the boy isn't an abnormality, but a real person. The boy leads Kazuya to the next corridor, pointing at the bald middle-aged man. But Kazuya whispers to him, saying the man is no longer human. As Kazuya carefully inspects the corridor, confirms there are no abnormalities, and walks forward, he doesn't notice that the boy has already spotted the corridor's abnormality. On the back of the sign above, there are countless words go back written all over it. The boy tries to warn him, but Kazuya has already reached the next corner. The sign changes back to 0 once more, and the two are sent back to the starting point again. Kazuya steps into a new corridor about to move forward, when he notices the boy standing motionless in front of an iron door. He immediately steps back warily, examining the door carefully, and only then realizes he almost missed an abnormality. The door's handle is installed right in the middle of the door. However, the moment they step into the next corridor, the lights above suddenly start flickering violently, then go out completely. The surroundings are plunged into pitch darkness where you can't see your own hands. Kazuya hastily takes out his phone, turning on the flashlight. In the dim light, he sees that the cover of the ventilation duct on the wall has fallen off at some point. Dark red liquid is seeping out of the wall, as if something just crawled out of it. He instinctively moves the phone's light upward, illuminating the sign above. The sign is already covered with a swarm of mice. What's even more terrifying, each of them has distinct human facial features on their bodies, just like what was reported in the news earlier. Kazuya is scared out of his wits, grabbing the boy and hurrying to turn around and flee back to the previous corridor. Before he can calm down from the panic, Nami's figure appears in the corridor, standing quietly not far away. The little boy, who has been silent all this time, suddenly speaks for the first time, calling out "Mom" to that figure. He tightly holds back the boy, who is trying to rush forward. Nami on the opposite side gently strokes her own abdomen, when she softly asks the boy about his father. The boy pauses for a moment, then whispers that he has never met his dad. The two continue moving forward. This time, the boy keenly notices that the number 8 on the sign above is reversed. They immediately turn back the way they came in accordance with the rules, entering the next corridor. At this moment, an iron door on the side that has been locked all along suddenly creaks, opening eerily on its own. Kazuya pushes the iron door open, and behind it is endless darkness. The faint sound of a baby's constant crying comes from afar. To his shock, the outline of a subway car emerges in the darkness. Through the car window, he clearly sees another version of himself wearing headphones, expressionlessly ignoring the office worker next to him, berating the mother holding a baby. Kazuya, from two different time and space, seem to make eye contact for a moment. Deeply shaken, he quietly closes the iron door, turning around with the boy and retreating to the corridor. The sign has now changed to 6, only 2 steps away from the final exit. Kazuya asks the boy what the first thing he wants to do is after leaving here. The boy replies without hesitation, "I want to eat pizza, the kind with lots and lots of cheese." But Kazuya himself feels deep confusion. He's not sure where to go after escaping here. The boy walks up to him, solemnly handing him a conch shell, and says it can protect him. Kazuya strokes the boy's hair, accepting the gift. The two walk forward again. The scenes in the corridor are like a looping film reel, a dentist's poster, a poster of a legal aid uncle, plastic surgery ads, high-paying job postings, subway etiquette reminders, surveillance cameras. All of a sudden, a shrill alarm blares through the entire space. They turn around abruptly, only to see turbid floodwaters surging toward them from the end of the corridor. Kazuya grabs the boy's hand and sprints in the opposite direction, but in the hasty run, the boy accidentally trips and falls to the ground. Kazuya turns around to grab him, but the floodwaters ruthlessly engulf everything. In the suffocating darkness, Kazuya gradually loses consciousness. When he regains his senses again, he finds himself standing on an open beach. Beside him is his ex-girlfriend Nami, smiling. The boy, playing in the sea, shouts "Dad" loudly at him. Faced with Kazuya's confusion, Nami says softly, "No one can know in advance which path is correct, but everything will eventually get better." She says she believes Kazuya will protect the boy, and that one day, the boy will protect him too. At this moment, the boy picks up a beautiful conch shell, runs toward them happily, and gives the amulet to Kazuya. Staring at the conch shell in the boy's clear eyes, the fog in Kazuya's heart suddenly lifts. He stretches out his arms, holding the child tightly in his arms. Kazuya lifts the boy up and plays with him in the sea. The scene suddenly shifts. He finds himself back again in the subway corridor submerged by floodwaters. In the turbulent current, he uses his last bit of strength to lift the boy up to the sign at the top of the corridor. The boy clings tightly to his hand, trying to keep him from being swept away by the current. After a brief spell of unconsciousness, when Kazuya wakes up again, the floodwaters have receded, and the boy is nowhere to be found. He walks alone through an unusually normal corridor, and the path ahead finally becomes clear. The sign for exit 8 appears. After countless cycles and struggles, he finally stands at the end of the maze. Kazuya clutches the conch shell the boy gave him, as if drawing some unshakable strength from it. He then resolutely descends the stairs at the exit, turns the final corner, and the familiar sound of the subway pulling into the station, and the hustle and bustle of the crowd rush toward him. This time, he doesn't hesitate. He takes out his phone voluntarily, dials Nami's number, and tells her he is on his way to the hospital, and will be there soon. Stepping into the crowded subway car, Kazuya scrolls through phone videos as usual. At this moment, the urgent cry of a baby is heard again beside him. He turns to look, and sees an exhausted office worker, shouting harshly at a mother holding a baby, complaining that the crying irritates him, and scolding her for bringing a baby on the subway during rush hour. All the passengers in the car remain silent, with only the office worker's insults, and the baby's cries echoing and intertwining. Kazuya once thought that endless cycle was a punishment for his indifference, his avoidance, and his indecision. Every wrong turn seemed to mock him, as if he would never be able to make the right choice. Kazuya will never forget the sight of that middle-aged man slamming his briefcase down, roaring furiously at the sign. It was the despair after a failed choice. It was not until the moment the floodwaters engulfed him, when he lifted the boy's small body, that he realized the conch shell the boy gave him wasn't an amulet, but a token, constantly reminding him that his choices were linked to another person's life. The old Kazuya would surely have had an asthma attack, due to immense pressure and confusion, using physical pain to avoid answering. But this time, Kazuya took the initiative to call her, for he knew that silence and procrastination were choices in themselves. The corridor taught him how to face abnormalities. He had to either turn back immediately or move forward, but never stay stuck in place. What was happening in the subway was the cold abnormality of human nature. In the past, he would have put on his headphones, building an invisible wall around himself, choosing to not notice the abnormality, and then continue on his way numbly. This scene would have cycled infinitely like the corridor. The crying baby would become another lost boy, the angry office worker would become another broken middle-aged man, and the silent Kazuya would be trapped forever in the maze before exit 8, never able to escape. The so-called growth, perhaps, isn't about suddenly getting all the answers, but about finally gaining the courage to face problems, make choices, and bear their consequences. Kazuya chose to take the initiative to face his girlfriend at the hospital, chose to step into the middle of the argument, no longer asking which path was the right one. He only knew he had to choose to keep moving forward. The film ends here. Exit 8 is an adaptation of an indie game. The film's most successful breakthrough lies in elevating the minimalist mechanism of Spot the Difference into a three-layered narrative structure. The first part, The Lost Man, establishes the rules from the male lead's perspective. Kazuya Ninomiya uses an extremely restrained performance to depict the process of mental collapse, from calmly searching for clues at the beginning, to collapsing when glimpsing the future in the flood scene. His subtle facial expressions bear the entire weight of the narrative. The second part, The Walking Man, complements the worldview from a passerby's perspective. This character, who degenerates from a player to an NPC, serves as a tragic footnote to evading responsibility. The appearance of the boy in the third part completes the thematic sublimation. This character, who never appeared in the game, is endowed with an angelic metaphorical meaning. He bears a striking resemblance to the male lead's ex-girlfriend, behaves like a child with autism, but is actually the materialization of the male lead's inner sense of responsibility. When the male lead sacrifices himself to save the boy in the flood, and sees the illusion of a family of 3 on the beach, the film completes its transition from a horror genre to a coming-of-age fable. This structural design not only retains the perspective-shifting experience familiar to game fans, but also provides an emotional anchor for ordinary audiences. The film's criticism of Japanese society is hidden in the details. The collective indifference in the opening subway car corresponds to the philosophical essence of the Spot the Difference mechanism. Modern people have long been accustomed to swiping past abnormalities. Just as the male lead initially avoided the news of the pregnancy, the inclusion of religious metaphors makes the theme even more profound. The NPC played by Nana Komatsu tempts the walking man to sink like a devil, while the boy guides the male lead to awakening like an angel, forming a trial ground of human nature where good and evil intertwine. The handling of the ending is simply masterful. Unlike the original game's setting of returning to the ground, the male lead's exit isn't an escape from a physical space, but the moment he saves the boy in the flood. When he finally becomes willing to take responsibility, Exit 8 has already opened in his heart. As the director said in an interview, that infinitely extending corridor is the cycle of daily life. The exit isn't something you see, but something you walk toward. This interpretation of redemption not only dispels the emptiness of supernatural horror, but also offers a warm way to break through the indifference of society. The success of Exit 8 is by no means accidental. With its gamified exterior, it wraps profound humanistic reflections, integrating workplace oppression, social indifference, and personal growth into one. When Exit 13 of Tokyo's Shibuya station was transformed into a limited-time dungeon, and 150,000 people lined up to experience the cycle, we suddenly realized that everyone has an underground corridor in their heart that they need to escape from, and the true exit always lies in the courage to face fear and accept responsibility. However, after the film's release, reviews were polarized. Some were obsessed with deciphering the logical flaws of the cycle, while others immersed themselves in the psychological experience it conveys. But there is no denying that Genki Kawamura, with his sincere creation, allowed Exit 8 to break out of the clichés of genre films. It is both a thrilling escape room and a self-examination of facing inner dilemmas. When we encounter the confusion of Exit 8 in life, perhaps we also need to maintain observation and repetition, and retain courage in despair like the male protagonist. This work ultimately proves that the most terrifying thing is never a tangible monster, but an inescapable mental cage, and the most precious exit may not be at the end of the corridor, but in every exploration where we refuse to give up.